Before I tell you what happened that night, you need to understand something about loss. Loss does not always scream when it arrives. Sometimes it knocks quietly, wearing the face of someone you once trusted. That evening, I stood on the porch with rain sliding down my sleeves and my suitcase biting into my palm. The porch light was already off, not broken, not burned out, turned off. Someone inside had decided I no longer belonged. My coat was soaked at the shoulders, but the cold I felt had nothing to do with the weather falling from the sky. It came from deeper inside, from realizing that after a lifetime of giving, I had finally been priced. I was 73 years old. I had raised 2 children, buried 1 husband, loved 4 grandchildren with my whole heart. I had never missed a bill payment, never asked anyone for money, never imagined I would end a day standing homeless in front of my daughter's house. All of it began with 1 sentence, not shouted, not whispered, delivered casually, like a man ordering coffee. "We're short on rent," he said. "You live here. You either start paying or you can leave." It wasn't my daughter who said it. It was her husband, Kurt. 8 years in the family, and already sitting in my late husband's chair, like it had always belonged to him. I remember staring at his sweatshirt, stained, faded, smelling faintly of old beer. I truly thought he was joking, because surely no man would speak that way to the mother of his wife. Surely my daughter would laugh and say, "Stop it, Kurt, that's my mom." But she didn't. She stood beside him, arms folded tight, eyes fixed on the floor. That silence told me everything. I said no, not angrily, not dramatically, just quietly. "No, Kurt, I'm not giving you my pension." Something shifted in his eyes then. He hadn't expected resistance. He had expected tears, begging, guilt. He had mistaken kindness for weakness. An hour later, when I returned from the pharmacy, my suitcases were waiting by the front door, packed neatly, like I was a guest who had overstayed her welcome. I knocked. No answer. The television hummed inside. Cartoons for the kids, probably, but no one came. I stood there in the drizzle, hands still raised, realizing something terrifying. You can raise a child for decades and still become invisible overnight. My belongings fit into 2 suitcases, clothes, photographs, my Bible, a scarf my mother gave me before she died, and the pension card that suddenly mattered more than my presence. Across the street, the neighbors avoided eye contact, not because they were cruel, because discomfort makes cowards of us all. Rain has a way of hiding humiliation. I carried the bags down the steps slowly, one painful stare at a time, and placed them into my trunk. The car was still mine, paid in cash years ago. One of the last things no one had managed to claim. I sat behind the wheel without starting the engine, not because I lacked somewhere to go. I knew exactly where I was headed. My friend Ruthie had once told me, if life ever turns sideways, you come to me. No questions asked. Still, even with a destination, you have to sit with the moment. Let it settle. Let it sting. I stared at the windshield, watching raindrops collide and disappear. I thought about the casserole cooling in their refrigerator, the crayon drawings on the fridge door, the way my daughter once crawled into my bed after nightmares and whispered, "Don't tell Dad I cried." I started the engine. The road to Ruthie's house was only minutes away, but I took the long route, past the sidewalk where my husband and I used to walk on Sunday evenings, past the gas station where a teenager once offered to call my son for help before realizing I no longer had his number memorized. Some losses happened slowly, others all at once. When Ruthie opened the door, she didn't ask what happened. She only said, "So it finally did." I nodded. She pulled me into her arms and whispered, "Tea or whiskey?" I chose tea. I always do. That night, wrapped in a borrowed blanket, with peppermint in the air, I finally allowed myself to feel everything. The betrayal, the loneliness, but also something unexpected. Clarity. For the first time in years, I stopped making excuses for people who had stopped protecting me. That was the night something inside me closed forever. Not with anger, with understanding. And that understanding was only the beginning, because the truth was far worse than being thrown out in the rain. The truth was I had been disappearing for years and never noticed. Grief does not end when the funeral does. It only learns how to sit quietly beside you. After James died, the house became too loud and too silent at the same time. Every clock tick felt aggressive. Every empty chair felt intentional. He passed on a Tuesday morning, just before breakfast finished cooking. One moment he was reading the sports page, complaining about the referee from Sunday's game. The next moment, his coffee cup was shaking in his hand. Then it stopped. I remember the sound it made when the spoon hit the mug. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just a dull clink that echoed far longer than it should have. We had been married for nearly 4 decades, 38 years of shared routines. One toothbrush always wet, one towel never folded correctly, 2 children, 1 mortgage, 1 pension, and thousands of private jokes no one else would ever understand. When people say time heals everything, they are lying gently. Time does not heal. It only teaches you how to function while bleeding. I was 59 when he died, still young enough to be useful, too old to start over. Janine was already married then. That marriage didn't survive long. The divorce came quietly, without courtroom drama or screaming matches. She arrived at my door one afternoon with a duffel bag and a toddler on her hip. "Just for a week or 2, she said. Her eyes were exhausted. I didn't hesitate. We cleared the guest room that same night. 1 week turned into several months, and honestly, I was grateful for the noise again. Little footsteps in the hallway, plastic toys under the couch. Chloe had crooked teeth and fearless laughter. She clung to my legs when she was tired. She reminded me of Janine as a child before adulthood hardened her edges. I babysat without being asked, cooked meals without being thanked. I told myself this was what mothers do. Eventually, Janine found work again, a design firm downtown. She began dating someone new. That someone was Kurt. At first, he seemed harmless, the kind of man who remembered birthdays and brought grocery store flowers. The kind who complimented dinner even when it was overcooked. He made Janine laugh again, and after everything she had endured, that laughter felt precious. So I ignored the small things, the way he never offered to help clean up, the way conversations stopped when I entered rooms. The way he once asked casually, "So how much is your house worth these days?" I laughed it off. Older women are trained to doubt themselves. We're taught that discomfort means we're dramatic. Still, something inside me noticed. Age gives you many things. One of them is intuition sharpened by experience. I could feel when Kurt watched me, not with kindness, with calculation. When Janine and Kurt moved into a larger house, they asked if I would consider selling mine. They needed help with the down payment. I said yes, not because I trusted him, because I trusted my daughter, or wanted to. The new place was bright and modern, too white for my taste. They insisted I keep a key. Your family, Janine said. At first, I visited occasionally, then weekly, then overnight stays happen naturally. The kids love when you're here, she said, when I fell on the back steps of my rental unit and tore a ligament in my ankle. The invitation came quickly. You shouldn't be alone right now, Janine said. I resisted. I had my routines, my independence, but she insisted. So I moved into the upstairs bedroom, the one with the slanted ceiling. At first it felt temporary, just until my leg healed. Then the weeks stretched quietly. My mail began arriving there. My pension was redirected just to simplify things. My belongings were boxed to make room for the kids. I didn't complain. Women my age were raised to be grateful for scraps. Kurt started joking at dinner. You should pay rent, Helen. He laughed. You eat more than all of us combined. I laughed too, because laughing felt safer than asking whether he meant it. Janine worked longer hours. Kurt worked less, then not at all. His days filled with sports channels and half-finished business ideas. The children adored him. He was fun out loud, unpredictable. Compared to me, I was quiet background furniture. When Chloe turned 11, she stopped coming to my room at night. When Danny started school, he barely noticed whether I packed his lunch. I told myself this was natural. Grandmothers were meant to fade gently. offer help when needed, disappear when not. But I had not saved coins in coffee cans for 30 years to be told I owed rent. I had not buried a husband to become an inconvenience. Looking back now, I see how gradual it was. 1,000 tiny surrenders, 1,000 moments where I stepped aside instead of speaking, until the day I realized they no longer saw me as family, only as an expense. And the house itself had changed, not suddenly, not slowly, like erosion. A bill placed deliberately on the counter, a sigh when I entered the kitchen, a thermostat discussion that wasn't really about temperature. Support, when invisible, eventually becomes expected, and expectation, when unmet, becomes resentment. I began noticing how Kurt looked at me, like a man studying numbers. The first crack came late one night. I overheard him on the phone. "She gets a pension," he said, "full benefits, and she doesn't even pay rent." The way he said it made my stomach tighten. I mentioned it to Janine carefully. "Kurt seems stressed," I said. She didn't look up. "We're all stressed, Mom." That was the moment I realized she was already choosing peace over protection. Bills began appearing openly. Electric. Internet. Groceries, not addressed to me, but displayed where I could see them. Once my pension card went missing. It appeared later in a kitchen drawer. No explanation. A spreadsheet appeared on the counter one morning. Household expenses. And one line at the bottom. Contribution. To be determined. That's when I understood. They weren't asking anymore. They were preparing. And I still told myself this would pass, because believing otherwise meant admitting that the child I raised was slowly allowing me to be erased. The hardest betrayals never announce themselves loudly. They arrive wearing practicality and reason. After that spreadsheet appeared on the counter, it wasn't. I paid it once, then again. Then it stopped being discussed at all. "You've got your pension," Kurt reminded me casually. "It's not like you're paying rent anywhere else." That sentence changed something inside me, because I understood then how he now saw me. Not as Janine's mother. Not as the children's grandmother, as income, as coverage, as backup funding for his failures. Janine never corrected him. She didn't agree either. She simply stayed silent. Silence can be louder than cruelty. Slowly, my life became assumed availability. Pick up the kids, run errands, watch them while he handled something. He never said thank you. He said, "You're home anyway." My calendar stopped being mine. I became background labor. One morning I came downstairs and found a note taped to the milk carton. "For kids only." Below it sat a cheap container of yogurt. No label. No name. Just mine. I stared at that refrigerator longer than I care to admit. That was the day I started buying my own groceries. I kept them separate, like a roommate in a college dorm, not a woman who had given birth to the homeowner. The children noticed. Children always do. Danny said one day, bluntly, Mom says you shouldn't use things if you don't help pay. Chloe was quieter. Kurt said you used to have money, she whispered. But now you're just staying here. Each sentence landed gently and cut deeply. Shame crept in, not because I had done wrong, but because I had waited too long. The manipulation grew subtler. One evening, Kurt handed me a grocery receipt. Just Venmo me, he said. I looked at the total. Almost everything was his. Protein powder, imported beer, razor cartridges. My items added up to less than lunch. I don't use Venmo, I replied. He laughed. Of course you don't. One night after the children slept, Kurt cleared his throat. We need to talk about expenses. Janine sat beside him, exhausted. We're behind on rent, he said. Then he looked directly at me. You get steady income every month, more than we do. My stomach tightened. We think it's fair you contribute directly to rent, I clarified. Yes, he said. I looked at Janine. She didn't meet my eyes. We need your pension, Kurt continued. All of it. Just for a couple months. The room went silent. And if I say no, I asked quietly. He didn't hesitate. Then this arrangement isn't working. That was it. I nodded once. Then I'll go. And that's when I understood something. They had already decided. I was just catching up. By evening, my suitcases were by the door. While I picked up medication at the pharmacy, they carried my bags outside, placed them neatly on the porch. It had started raining. When I returned, the porch light was off. I knocked. No one answered. I rang the bell. Nothing. Curtains shifted inside. Someone saw me. They simply chose not to move. So I lifted my suitcases again, one in each hand. My wrist throbbed. My shoulder burned. I did not rush, because dignity moves slowly. When I drove away, I didn't cry. Not yet. Some tears wait for safety. And that night, sitting at Ruthie's kitchen table, wrapped in peppermint and kindness, I finally understood. They were never going to stop asking. Janine was never going to defend me. The apology I wanted was never coming. Not because they were monsters, because to them, this had become normal. And I had stayed long enough for it to feel justified. The morning after I slept at Ruthie's house, I woke before the sun had fully risen. My body ached in quiet places. My knees complained when I stood. But my mind felt sharper than it had in months. Clarity has a strange way of arriving after everything finally collapses. Ruthie made eggs in a pan scratched from decades of use. She didn't ask questions. She simply placed a plate in front of me and waited until I spoke. I need to fix my paperwork, I said aloud. She nodded once. Whatever you need, I'll help. By late morning, we drove to the bank. The young man at the desk smiled politely until I told him what I needed. I want to remove every authorization, I said. All of them. He blinked. Even family members? He asked gently. Especially family members, I replied. He typed quietly, while I signed form after form. Each signature felt like reclaiming oxygen. New passwords, new security questions, new boundaries. When he slid the final document across the desk, he asked if there was anything else. Yes, I said. I want to protect my granddaughter. Not her parents, just her. A trust account, untouchable until adulthood. Something safe in case the world ever tried to use her too. After the bank, I called my lawyer, the same woman who handled James's will. She didn't ask why. She simply said, "Come in tomorrow morning." Her office smelled of lavender and old paper. I sat across from her desk with my hands folded tightly together. I need to change everything, I said. Power of attorney revoked. Beneficiaries rewritten. Healthcare proxy updated. My granddaughter listed alone. This isn't revenge, the lawyer said gently. No, I replied. It's correction. We spent hours going through documents I had ignored for years, not because I didn't care, but because I trusted the wrong people. When I left her office, I felt lighter, not happy, not grounded. Back at Ruthie's, my phone buzzed. Janine, then Kurt, then Janine again. I didn't answer. Silence, I learned, was finally mine. The next day, a letter arrived, handwritten, from my daughter. She said she was confused. She said the kids missed me. She said we were family. She did not say sorry. I folded the letter and placed it away, not to punish her, to protect myself. That afternoon, I made a decision. I wanted my own place, small, quiet, mine. No shared keys, no guest room ceilings, no asking permission to exist. The apartment was nothing special. Second floor, beige carpet, creaky cabinets, but sunlight filled the windows, and no one questioned my presence. When I signed the lease, my hands shook, not from fear, from relief. The first night, I slept on the floor wrapped in a borrowed blanket, and for the first time in years, I slept deeply. I bought furniture slowly, an armchair from a second-hand shop, a lamp with warm yellow light, a kettle that whistled softly. Every object was chosen deliberately, nothing borrowed, nothing temporary. Life found rhythm again. Morning tea on the balcony, short walks around the block. Knitting after dinner for the first time since James died. The quiet was different now, not tense, earned. One evening, my phone rang. Kurt. I let it ring, then answered. He spoke carefully, like someone negotiating. I just wanted to talk, he said. I'm not interested in excuses, I replied. Silence followed. Then he hung up. An hour later, my phone rang again. Chloe. Her voice was small. Grandma, are you okay? My chest tightened. I'm okay, sweetheart, I said gently. I just needed a place to rest. I miss you, she whispered. I miss you too. That was when I realized Leaving the house did not mean leaving love. Some love follows you when control cannot. The next weeks passed slowly. Janine kept calling. I kept breathing. Then one afternoon, a drawing arrived in the mail. A small house, a tree, a woman on the porch. Written in crooked letters, Grandma's house. I placed it on my fridge. It became proof that dignity rebuilds quietly, and that sometimes walking away is not abandonment. It is survival. The first knock on my door did not scare me. That surprised me. For months, every sudden sound had made my chest tighten. Doors used to mean demands. Voices used to mean expectations. But this knock was different. Soft. Careful. Like someone asking permission instead of assuming ownership. I stood slowly from my chair. My knees complained, but my heart did not. When I opened the door, Chloe stood there. Her backpack hung low on one shoulder. Her hair was pulled back too tightly, the way her mother did it when nervous. Behind her, down the stairs, Janine waited, not crossing the threshold, not following, just standing, unsure. Chloe looked up at me with those same eyes she had as a baby, the ones that always searched my face to see if she was safe. "Hi, Grandma," she said quietly. I opened the door wider. "Coming, sweetheart." She stepped inside slowly, like she was afraid the invitation might disappear. She looked around. The small kitchen, the armchair by the window, the drawing still on the fridge. "It's little," she said. "It is," I replied gently. "But it's peaceful." She smiled at that. We sat at the table with 2 mugs of tea. Steam curled between us. She wrapped her hands around the cup the way children do when they want comfort. "I missed you," she said. My throat tightened. "I missed you every day." She hesitated, then spoke softly. "Mom cries sometimes at night." I nodded. "I know. She says she should have protected you." I closed my eyes briefly. That sentence landed heavier than anything Janine had ever said. "She didn't know how," Chloe continued. "She was scared." I looked at my granddaughter and saw truth without excuses. "She was," I said gently. "But fear doesn't make harm disappear." Chloe nodded slowly. "Children understand fairness better than most adults ever do." We baked together that afternoon. Flour on the counter, cinnamon in the air. She rolled the dough carefully, tongue peeking from the corner of her mouth, exactly the way Janine used to. When the pie went into the oven, she leaned against the counter dramatically. "Baking is exhausting," she declared. I laughed, not politely, not quietly, but fully. The kind of laugh that surprises even yourself. When Janine returned that evening, she stood in my doorway. She didn't step inside. She didn't speak immediately. Her eyes moved around the apartment. The simplicity, the calm, the absence of tension. "I didn't realize," she said finally, "how small you'd made yourself for us." I didn't answer right away, because some truths need silence to be respected. I should have stopped him, she whispered. Yes, I said. She flinched, but I did not soften it. I needed you, I continued calmly, and you chose comfort instead. Tears slid down her cheeks. I know, she said. I see it now. I'm glad, I replied. But seeing comes after damage. We stood there quietly. No yelling, no forgiveness speeches, just honesty resting between us. I don't expect things to go back, she said. They won't, I replied. But we can go forward carefully. She nodded. That was enough. After that, life became quieter, not empty, intentional. Chloe visited often, sometimes with her mother, sometimes alone. Janine never crossed boundaries again. She asked before visiting. She knocked. She waited. That mattered. I planted herbs on the balcony. Basil, mint, rosemary. Watching something grow again healed something inside me. Ruthie came over on Sundays. We drank tea, talked about nothing important, laughed about everything unnecessary. I wear upon blankets for no particular reason. Sometimes healing looks boring to people addicted to chaos, but boring felt holy. One afternoon, months later, I found the old notebook, the one with the list of everything I had ever given. Money, time, love, silence. I read it slowly. Then I tore the pages out, folded them carefully, dropped them into the trash. I wrote one sentence instead. I am still here, and I am enough. The phone rang less often. The guilt disappeared entirely. Peace does not announce itself. It simply stays. One evening, as the sun set orange between the buildings across the street, I sat on my balcony with tea. The air smelled like laundry, soap, and distant dinners. I thought about the night in the rain. The suitcases, the porch light turned off, and I realized something astonishing. That moment did not break me. It saved me. Because being loved should never cost dignity. Because family should never require silence. Because help is not help when it comes with chains. If you are listening to this story, and feel yourself shrinking for someone else, please hear me. Love does not ask you to disappear. Care does not demand your savings. And loyalty should never mean suffering quietly. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is pick up your bags with shaking hands and walk away into the rain. Because on the other side of that storm is a small apartment, a kettle that whistles, a chair by the window, and peace waiting patiently for you to arrive. I am 73 years old. My knees ache. My hair is silver. But I am finally home, not because of walls, not because of blood, because I chose myself, and that choice gave me my life back.